You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below. Be sure, smash that like button. Bill Connolly of ESPN created the SP Plus projections. I mistakenly sometimes call it S&P Plus, which, of course, that's the stock market. But it's the SP Plus projections. And so it's a metric that Bill uses that factors in three things. Your returning production, your recent recruiting, and your recent history. So it dates back the three previous seasons. And after the February signing period were the most recent projections that Bill did. And since then, there's obviously been a lot more turnover as the transfer portal has continued to churn players in different spots. So now that spring football is pretty much over for everybody and you're heading toward the summer, Bill Connolly went and updated the S&P projections. And the two most interesting teams, quite honestly, on the entire projection are LSU and USC. Because the transfers with Caleb Williams going to USC and with Jaden Daniels going to LSU, and then just the sheer volume of transfers, have seen the computers really respect those two programs. So when you look at the projected, the SP Plus ranking, since February, 14 teams have seen their projection rise by at least one adjusted point per game. The most was Ball State at 3.4. The others that saw that big of a jump, the 14 that were by a point or more, the biggest moves, mentioned Ball State was number 1. USC was number 2, which raised 13 spots, followed by San Jose State and LSU. LSU improved its ranking by 9 spots at an average of 2.1 points per game after the transfer. But here's the interesting thing. Since February, the February signing period, LSU's added 3 players. Colby Fields, the linebacker from South Carolina, Sevyn Banks, the cornerback from Ohio State, and Jaden Daniels. The only offensive player they added was Jaden Daniels. And that addition alone caused the computers to respond to LSU and really bump them up in the rankings. So while this isn't going to be something that makes LSU fans super duper excited, the SP Plus ranking currently has LSU 36th in the most recent update. So, I mean, you're talking about, though, a significant jump of 9 spots from where they were post-February. And there's a few other things to consider. Like, they consider the previous 3 football seasons. Well, the last 2 years stunk, but the one 3 years ago was the national championship year. So, did they just cancel each other out? The thing it doesn't consider is a coaching change. So, that's why I'll tell you, like, computer rankings and the metric aren't the be-all, end-all. It's not the only thing that you should consider when trying to judge a team, but it is a consideration, and the computers have really responded to LSU with the signing class. The other thing that was very interesting is the flip side of that. I'll come back to LSU in a second, but the biggest movers the other way, the programs that saw their number drop the most, are all smaller schools. Wyoming dropped 19 spots. James Madison dropped 17 spots. Georgia Southern dropped 9. Texas State dropped 5. Why? They're losing all their best players. Everybody that's good is leaving these schools and going to Power 5 schools. So that's something else you're seeing, obviously, is the benefit for the Power 5 schools plucking away really good players. But the flip side is also true for smaller schools that are losing their better players who are just stepping up in competition, which is going to be a casualty and just a consistent part of the transfer portal era. A couple of things about LSU. I mentioned that Daniels is the only offensive player that they've added since the February signing day. Clearly, the computers like him because of his production. The question really is, though, is he even going to win the job? So we don't know that. So that's one variable that you have to question. The other thing that is a subjective variable that we won't really know until the season starts is Brian Kelly's value. So, as I mentioned, this ranking does not factor in for coaching change. So, do you believe Brian Kelly is more valuable in the win-loss column to LSU than Ed Orgeron? I do. I think you all know I do. But many of you, I'm sure, do as well. Brian Kelly is objectively a more successful head coach than Ed Orgeron. I mean, you could point out the Natty, and I'm not discrediting that. But if you're looking at resume, record as a whole over the career, Brian Kelly, everywhere he's been, has built and maintained consistent success. Ed Orgeron had a one-year moonshot, and everything else has really been a disaster. So what's more replicable, do you believe? And Brian Kelly having success, I believe, is that. And I think the AP ranking, whenever they come out, will be far more telling as far as what people think Brian Kelly's value is. I want to give you an example. So last year, the preseason top 25. So remember, 2020, LSU wins the Natty, 2020 happens, it's COVID, it's racial injustice. It's all the things that happened in that year, which was so weird. And a lot of people just said, look, that was a one-off. That was a crazy one-off. 2021 will be the real telltale as to, is LSU more the 2020 or 2019 LSU under Ed Orgeron? And we got our answer very quickly. But preseason, LSU was number 16 in the country last year, preseason. After a 5-5 season, LSU was preseason number 16. The collective college football world said, yeah, 2020 was a crazy one-off. They're really going to be good. They got talent. They won a Natty 2 years ago. It's going to be fine. Well, obviously, they didn't. So I don't know that LSU will be ranked in the preseason this year. If they are, I think they'll be very low. But Brian Kelly in his first year at each of his previous 3 stops, I'm not counting the FCS stop, but at Central Michigan, he took a team that was 3-9 and they improved by a game. They were 4-7 his first year. At Cincinnati, he inherited a team that went 7-5. Now, he coached the bowl game and won it that year, but he inherited a team that went 7-5 without him, and they improved by 2 games the following year. They went 9-3, won the bowl game, and got to 10. So a 2-game improvement at his first year at Cincinnati, and then same thing at Notre Dame, where they were 6-6 under Charlie Weiss. Year 1, they went 7-5, won the bowl game, got to 8 wins. So 1 win in the regular season better, and then won the bowl game. My point is, each of his 3 stops as a head coach in the FBS, each of his 3 stops in year 1, his teams improved their record from the year before, which is why I look at LSU this year, and they went 6-6 last year. Obviously lost the bowl game, but at least a 1-game improvement puts LSU at 7-5 in bowl eligibility, and I think they will be better than that. The question is, how much of a significant variable is Brian Kelly to this whole equation for LSU in 2022 to take the pieces that are there, having remade the roster. We all know the number, 17 mid-year enrollees. They added all the transfers. They lost their top 5 guys in the secondary, but replaced them with 5 guys, transfers in the secondary. So you've added a transfer quarterback. You all know the numbers. I mean, you get it. We talk about it enough. But how can he mold that team and maximize their production in year 1? That'll be the telltale. But the computers like LSU. The computers have looked at what LSU has done in the transfer portal and said, ding, and it's been an uptick. How far up can they go is the big question for LSU in 2022. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.